Hey guys, this is Gene Jensen with BassResource.com. Today I want to talk about fishing rod power and rod action. It's a question I get a lot, and I know that it's confusing because for the longest time this confused me. So I've spent the last 3 or 4 months trying to go into my head, get into my head how I'm going to do this and how I'm going to teach you guys what this means without confusing you even more. I've done a lot of research. I found an article on Bass Resource by Eddie Taylor. I think it was called Understanding Fishing Rods or something like that. Anyway, Eddie Taylor is used to make custom rods out of North Carolina. And he wrote an article for Bass Resource years ago that covers action and power so well, I'm basically using his article for this video. So let's go ahead and get started. Action and power, two totally different things. One thing to understand before we even get started is that in the fishing industry, there is no industry standard for action and power. Every single company is going to have, their rod's going to flex a little bit different. A medium fast action rod, Ducket Micro Magic like this will not feel like a medium fast action Pinnacle. It will not feel like a medium fast action St. Croix. I mean, you name it. They're not going to feel exactly the same. So understand that when you go out to buy a rod, that they're going to feel different. Duckets tend to be a little bit on the light side of average, if you could say there's an average, but not much. It's not a big deal. I love these rods. They are good for me, okay, and I know how they're going to respond according to me fishing. So what I have here is I have two Ducket Micro Magic medium powered rods, okay. Notice that they flex different. So what's the difference? The only difference between these two rods is their action or their speed. This is a fast action rod. This is a moderate action rod. What makes this a fast action rod? Well, fast action rods typically will bend or flex while under load in the first third of the rod. So this is a fairly stiff rod. If it was an extra fast, it would bend up, something like this. Okay? Not much difference. It would just bend about like that, but a huge difference when you're talking about hook sets and things like and cast and fighting a fish and so on and so forth. We'll get into that in a minute. But then you've got your moderate action rod. It's bending the entire length of the blank. We call this a parabolic bend or a parabolic action. It bends the entire length. And that really makes a difference with some baits. So we have a moderate, we have a fast action. Also, action refers to the speed at which the rod returns to straight. Now this is probably going to bounce all around on my holder, so it's not going to be perfect. But returns to straight when it's released from a load. See? Slingshot across the road. But anyway, so when it's released from a load, it's how fast that it gets back up there. That also refers to the speed or the action of the rod. All right? So how does this relate to your fishing? What does it affect? One thing it does is it affects the cast. Okay? When you load up a rod, when you bring it back and you put the weight of that lure on the back end of that rod's going to flex. How well does it sling that lure? Is that lure going to be too heavy for that cast or too light for that cast? Is it going to overload the rod or is it going to underload the rod? That's why on the side of the rods, good thing this one comes out easy. On most rods, now not the Duckets, but you can read right on the side where it says these are the lure weights that are recommended. Now people get confused. They say, okay, I put a sinker on my bait. Do I weigh the bait? Do I weigh the soft plastic and the sinker and see if it matches that? No, don't do that. It just consider the lead the only thing you have to worry about when the lead's separate from the bait. You know, you put a 1/4 ounce weight, consider that 1/4 ounce, so on and so forth. Don't make it more technical, more confusing than what it is. You know, same thing with a jig. If I'm buying a 1/2 ounce jig or a 3/4 ounce jig, I don't care about the weight of the skirt or the trailer or anything else. I know I have a 1/2 ounce jig. I'm gonna look and see whether it's rated for a 1/2 ounce on my rod. That affects the cast. It also affects, the action also affects the action or the sensitivity in your rod, okay? So this parabolic bend is not as sensitive as that stiff rod. You tend to feel more vibration for a stiff rod. So I'm not going to use a parabolic bend rod for a bottom dragging bait, a bait where I have to feel every subtle bite or every little pebble I'm going across or things like that. Not going to feel it very well with this, okay? This is a good rod for open hook baits, crankbaits, things like that, small spinner baits, and stuff like that. So, but this rod, being that it's stiffer, is better for a light, you know, because it's a medium powered rod, better for a light jig or a shaky head or something like that, something that's going to be on the bottom, but I need to feel the bites, okay? That's what action affects. So now let's turn around, and I'm gonna set back up, and I'm gonna set up for power, and we'll go from there. All right, now let's talk about power. What I have here is I have 3 rods that are all fast action rods. Once again, you can tell because they bend in the top 1/3 of the rod, and the rest of the rod blank is very stiff or very straight. What power is the resistance of that rod to flexing. That's the definition of power. This is a heavy powered rod, this is a medium heavy, and this is a medium powered. You can see the difference in their flexing. You know, the medium power has a little more bend to it and so on and so forth. This has more backbone, but still it's only bending in the top 1/3. Now, why is this important to fishing? Why is power of a rod important in lure choice? Well, some lures, like this big jig right here, have really heavy wired hooks, okay? And other lures have, other jigs or other lures have lighter wire hooks, and they get even lighter than that. So you got to ask yourself, is this rod, is this heavy rod going to straighten that hook out when I set the hook? Or is that medium action rod going to have enough power to make that big thick hook penetrate into the tough part of the mouth of the fish? A bass's mouth is kind of like shoe leather. It's very, very tough. So you got to make sure you got enough power, but you don't want to have so much that you bend the hook out and lose the fish. It's all about keeping that fish on the hook. Another thing you've got to consider is, does that rod, if I'm pitching something into heavy cover and stuff like that, does that rod have enough beef behind it to be able to turn a 5, 6, 7, 8 pound bass out of that brush pile and get him coming your direction before he wraps you up? And you know, those are some of the things you got to consider. The other thing you need to consider is line weight. I made the mistake one time of putting a reel on a heavy action rod that I thought had 17 pound test on, but it actually had 12 pound test. And I broke 3 fish off on a jig before I realized that I had the wrong size line on my reel. You got to consider that. You know, it can make for a very horrible day of fishing if you have the wrong line on the rod. And the way you find out is it's written on the rod. If you look above the rod handle, hold on, let me go get a rod that has it. All right, this is a Pinnacle Perfecta. And right here above the rod handle is written the line recommendation and the lure weight recommendation, okay? And so what I have here is this one. This is about the same as this one right here. It's a medium heavy fast action. It can take 12 to 25 pound line, and I stay within that guideline one way or the other. I usually go for the high end, like this is 12 to 25, and I'd probably put 20 pound test on this because it is a jig rod and I like to fish jigs in heavy cover and things like that. All right, now let's recap. The thing that I consider the most about a rod is not its power. I really consider the action more than anything, because the action, it affects your casting, it affects your retrieval, you know, whether you can feel the bait coming in or whether It's given enough. It's got enough give to it to let the bait have some vibration or whatever else. It affects fighting the fish. Does it have enough give when I'm fighting it with a crankbait? I love a nice whippy crankbait rod because when the fish lunges, that rod can play with that fish and it will keep the tension in that line, and you're less likely to move it. If I was to do it with this heavy action rod, that heavy action rod would reach that straight point a lot faster and you would lose your fish. But just because it would allow more slack in the line. So I don't like to fish a crankbait with a heavy action rod. Action also affects the sensitivity of the rod more so than what power does. The more limber the rod, the less sensitive it's going to be. So I wouldn't use a moderate action rod that is designed for crankbait fishing. I wouldn't use it for dragging a shaky head or a jig or something like that where I really have to have good sensitivity. Okay, I just wouldn't do it. You just lose that sensitivity, and you don't need sensitivity on a spinnerbait or a crankbait or something like that, because that fish takes it and you can feel it bow up. You don't need to feel a whisper on the end of your line. Power affects your hook sets. You got to be able to turn your fish. You got to be able to penetrate that hook without breaking something, without straightening out the hook. So hopefully this video helped you out. Check out the next one in this series. It's going to be all about lure selection for specific rods and things like that. I'm going to try to go into more detail with that. But like I always say, visit bassresource.com for the answer to all your questions about bass fishing. One thing I want to let you guys know is I just started a new channel, and that channel is going to be all about tackle and lure and product reviews. I've been kind of shying away from that. Matter of fact, I've been totally against it for the last couple, 2-3 years. I just didn't want to do lure reviews because I didn't want to sound like I was pimping a bait. So I'm going to do them my way, and the reason I made this decision was I finally went and started looking at people's lure reviews, and I realized that I can add a little something to them. I can do things my way that will be a little bit better, maybe even a lot better than a lot of the lure reviews you see on here. So I've only got 2 videos on there right now, but I plan on here starting next week adding more and more videos to it and trying to get more into more of a schedule. And when and doing the reviews, I'm not going to go buy the latest and greatest lure. I'm just going to pull stuff out of my tackle box that I know about, and I'm going to give you a review on them just to start with, and then maybe I'll get into that other stuff. But anyway, have a great day and keep your line wet.